Hey everyone, it's Carolyn. Welcome to the channel. Today I have another unboxing video for you. So I have the Wild Unknown Archetype cards here, and I have kind of been intrigued by this deck for a while. I don't own the Wild Unknown Tarot, and I don't own that Oracle deck either, but the Archetype cards kind of spoke to me because they represent archetypes basically, and I love to do shadow work, and I love to kind of look at the different elements of things in our lives and see how they affect us. And so I feel like this deck is going to fit a lot of the things that I feel like my current collection is missing, and I feel like it's going to help me make my readings a little bit more in depth and help me understand either my clients better or even understand myself. I feel like these are going to be great cards to use on myself, and so I'm really excited to have this deck a part of my collection and to see the artwork on all of the cards, because there's so many cards in this deck. I believe it has 78, and I have not seen all of the cards. I've seen a couple of them, and I've been thinking about getting this deck for a while. I kind of put it off, but then I just kind of felt like I should purchase it one day, and so I'm really happy that I did, because I feel like it's really going to elevate my readings, and I feel like it's kind of missing a piece of my collection that I don't have. I will in this review be letting you know my first impressions of the cards, how the guidebook is, how the cards shuffle, and I will do a reading with it and let you guys know my thoughts on how these cards read, so that if you are a beginner, I'll let you know if this is beginner friendly or what level you need to be at with reading the cards in order to purchase this deck. So the first thing I want to point out about this box, it's not a rectangle like most boxes, it is square, and in being square, it's a little bit taller. So height-wise, if you have shorter shelves, I think this would fit, but if you're trying to squeeze this in on your shelf, it is a lot thicker than other decks, so you might want to consider putting these cards in a bag and storing them this way. But if you're someone who keeps your cards in boxes like I do, definitely make sure you have the space for it, because it is a bit larger in width than your other decks. So I'm going to try and take it out of the slip here. So it kind of has this slip on top of it. I might end up breaking this. Okay, good, I got it. So once you take that off, I'm probably going to get rid of this. Just as much as I like it, I'm someone where I don't do good with paper stuff like this. I end up breaking it over time, and so it's kind of just better for me not to have it. So I'm going to put that off to the side here. So this is what the box is going to look like for me, since I'm going to get rid of that slip. So it looks really pretty here. I'm wondering if this is going to be an image that's on one of the cards. On the side of the box, you have the Wild Unknown Archetypes, and it's by Kim Krams, if you didn't know that. Then on the back, the artwork continues, and it looks like this is going to be another magnetic strip box. So instead of opening it up from the front, you pull on the side here, and it has a magnet here to keep it secure. You're going to open it up, and it says, accept all, reject none. And then you have the guidebook here, and here you have the cards. And inside the box, again, it looks like there's some of the designs. Oh, and then these cards are in a box and on themselves. Okay, that's nice. I'm going to put these off to the side real quick as we look at the guidebook. First impressions of the box, though, I will say it looks very sturdy. It's very secure. As someone who stores my cards in boxes, I'm not going to have an issue with this. Like I said, the only thing to keep note of is the width of it when you go to store it, but besides that, there should be no issues. So here you have the table of contents. So it looks like there's some information before you get to the cards, and then when you have the cards, it looks like the archetypes are broken up into different categories. So you have the selves, the places, the tools, and the initiations. And then you have the ocean within the mountain, which this kind of talks about what led to Kim creating this deck. And then you have the sphere of influence, so this kind of discusses the influence of this deck. And she also credits people who helped inspire her in her life. And then you have awakening the archetypes. So you have arc plus type, the origin of its kind, the first image, the inherited emerging pattern, the initial and eternal energy. You have the origin of archetypes, their territory, their qualities, their intentions, archetypes versus stereotypes, the sacred pairs and trifectas, and then the missing hero. So this is kind of where she talks about all the archetypes that didn't make it into this deck. And then you have understanding the deck. So then you have the selves, the places, the tools, and the initiations. And then you have using the cards and what you can do before you begin, and how you can use the cards in your own practice, how you can summon the divine, and different tarot spreads that you can do. So this looks like it's a 3-card tarot spread. Then you have the inner quest spread. Looks like it's 4 cards. The Axis Mundi, a 5-card spread. the heroine's journey, another 5-card spread. And then this talks about card rotation and how you can read cards upright and what other rotations might mean for them. And then her final thoughts. And now you get to the cards themselves. So first impressions from that beginning part of the guidebook, I think it's really informative. I think it really shows us Kim's thought process behind making this deck. And I think there's also a lot of information about archetypes if you're new to them, on how you can understand them, how you can break them down before you even get into the cards and the archetypes themselves. It helps you understand the structure of them. And so here we have the selves, and so this is what the cards look like in the guidebook. So you have the image of the card on this side, and then here you have the name of the archetype, some keywords about it. Then you have a little bit of a paragraph explaining parts about it. You have the light parts, the dark aspects, and how you can go deeper. So this references pop culture, things that you can look at to understand this archetype a bit better. And then on the side here, these are things that are either helping you to understand the card a little bit better, or questions to ask yourself when this archetype appears in your life. And also, as you look at all the different cards, you'll see that the images on the side here represent kind of what that archetype is representing. So they change per card and archetype. So my first impressions of the guidebook is that it is super informative. There's a lot of details with it. I think when you get to the cards themselves, the archetypes are really broken down. They're really well explained for you, and there's a lot of detail put into this deck to explain them and break them down in ways that is very easy for all types of people. I really like how she includes ways that you can look up this archetype and its energy outside of the cards themselves, how you can bring it into your own life in other ways. And I also like some of the questions that are posed throughout the guidebook so that you can really understand how this archetype is affecting your life or why it's coming out in a reading for you. Based off the guidebook, I would say that this guidebook is really friendly for all levels of people. So whether you read cards intuitively already, you've been doing it for a long time, or whether you're new to oracle card readings, I would say that this is definitely a deck that you can get. It is very intense. There is a lot of knowledge, and so I would say you can be a beginner when you get this, because the guidebook definitely explains everything, and she also breaks down steps in the beginning pages on how to get to know the cards. If you are someone where you're new to reading, to take it slowly, maybe take it one card at a time. But what I would also recommend if you are new to reading cards is to make sure that this deck is one that you are ready for. Like I said, I think it's for all different levels, but I think you have to be going into this wanting to learn, wanting to understand this deck, because it does have a lot of cards in it. It has 78 cards in it, which is more than a traditional tarot deck has in it. So if you're someone where you kind of just want to dip your toes into the water, this deck might be too intense for you if you're not prepared for it. This is definitely going to be a deck that is meant to make you think and be a bit introspective and allow you to really understand the image of the card and what the card means and how you think about it. It's definitely a deck that's meant to be used in a very thoughtful, very mindful way. So if you're not up to the task of that, if you feel like that's going to be too challenging for you, definitely know your limits and wait until maybe later down the road you're going to want this deck. You'll be more prepared for it, and then you can get it. So I would say this deck is made for all types of people, no matter where you're at, but you have to know yourself if this is going to work for you or not. So here you have the box with just the cards in it. So this would be nice if the other box is too big, if you just want to store the cards in here, or if you want it to get a bag to put the cards and the guidebook in and store them together. You don't need to keep the big box. And so again, this box feels like good quality as well. It feels like it would definitely hold up a long time if you're going to store your cards in here. So now I'm going to open it. And this is a pull-up. On the inside, that's what it looks like. Very pretty. So here we have the cards again, and you have the tab pull, which is always nice. So the back of the deck is very interesting. It's like this black and white broken pieces or mosaic design. So I zoomed you in closer so you can see the cards a bit better. So starting off, you have the mother. I think it's really interesting in how the design of the nest and the pearl is all black and white, and then you have the color surrounding it. I love this card. For some reason, this is just really calling my attention. love how, like, zoomed in, it looks like a bunch of dots. You can't make out what it is, but zoomed out, you see the bigger picture. So I think these cards look stunning. Now getting into shuffling, here you see me attempting to shuffle these cards. These are very large cards and they're round, so it makes them a little bit more difficult to shuffle. If you have the tea leaf fortune cards, you know how shuffling round cards is a little bit different, but these cards are a lot bigger than the tea leaf fortune cards. These cards, if you're going to compare them to a normal size tarot deck, I put it next to it to compare. So see how it's shorter because it's round, but if I put these cards on top of it, that shows how much wider they are. So it's almost like you're shuffling with 1.5 decks, so it makes it a lot more difficult to shuffle. When I was doing the riffle shuffle, it wasn't that easy, as you can see. I ended up having to split the deck into 2 and shuffling each sides that way and then trying to combine them, but still that way doesn't shuffle them the best. I did find that the cards were becoming more flexible, so maybe with time that will be a better way to shuffle them, but right after getting them, it's not that easy to shuffle them that way. I also tried the overhand shuffle, and the overhand shuffle is okay, but I find that the cards kind of stick together. So again, it's not the best way to shuffle them. What I kind of do is I will use the overhand shuffle and have a group of cards come out, and then from there I'll shuffle individually. As you saw here when I was shuffling, I did have one card come out, so I'm going to use that for the collective's message. But typically when shuffling, what I'm personally going to do is take the cards individually and kind of shuffle them and change the way that they are laid out. So I'm going to shuffle them a bit manually, where I'm just placing cards on top of one another, and then I'm going to do the overhand shuffle into a cluster of cards come out, and then I'm going to shuffle that individually into I feel like I have the card that I'm meant to use or the multiple cards I'm meant to use. But because this deck is a little awkward to shuffle, I wouldn't necessarily always take jumpers, and I wouldn't just go with whatever cards come flying at you, because sometimes it's going to be a big group, it's not just going to be one. So I would really say just do what you feel like is right for you. But for me personally, both type of shuffling at this point is kind of awkward, so you really have to find a system that's going to work for you. I would say if you're new to shuffling, this probably is not going to be a good deck if you're trying to teach yourself how to shuffle. If you want to do it manually, that's fine. Or if you're someone where you like to just lay the cards out and either pick from the top or pick from the middle, that's fine. But if you're someone where you like the riffle and you like the overhand and you read with jumpers, I would say this might not be the deck for you, or you just need to practice with it until you find that you're comfortable with shuffling this deck. I also want to add that after doing the flip through of the cards, I did take a moment to do some readings for my friends and for myself, and I really like how the cards read. Again, I feel like the guidebook is super informative, and I think the images are really captivating, where you're able to pull the different energy of the archetypes and express it accurately for that person. I actually use these archetype cards to pinpoint an answer to a question, and I was actually able to get an answer with it. So I feel like this, while it's great for shadow work, can be used for all different types of reading, as long as you were open to the different interpretations and listening to your intuition, and you're not just looking for the guidebook to have all the answers. You really have to be someone where you are able to use your intuition and your own discernment to what the message means. But if you were someone where you are able to trust yourself, if you're someone where you're able to do readings, you already are doing them and practicing with them, I think this is a really great addition to your collection. I think it adds an additional layer of details, and it's different than a lot of oracle decks out there. Even in my other deck that features archetypes, I feel like that focuses more on the person, less on the archetype itself. So I like how this archetype represents more of the energy of not only people, but of the universe and the different facets in everything. And so I think this deck is very unique, and is one that really adds a lot of details to your reading, whether that is shadow work or whether that is normal everyday tarot questions. I feel like this is really great for those of you who are wanting this. So if you want to dive deeper with your readings and gain more knowledge, gain more details, or learn about archetypes in general, I would really suggest this deck. Now, if that's not what you're wanting, or if you're wanting something that's not super intense, not a lot of learning, not a lot of details, I wouldn't recommend this deck. I think this is really a deck that you have to be willing to put in the work to get to know it and get to understand it. But if you are someone where you're willing to do that and you're willing to learn, I think this is a great deck no matter where you're at with your practice. And so if this is something you're drawn to, I would highly recommend it. Again, the only caveat is shuffling. definitely play around with it and see how you prefer to shuffle this deck. But besides that, there's no flaws with it. Again, I feel like the guidebook is really informative. I like the questions that it poses. And then I want to do a little message for the collective since this card did come out. It's the Sustainer. And so from reading the guidebook and understanding the energy of the Sustainer, this is kind of an energy where you are focusing on the routine of life, focusing on sustaining your life. And with that comes the daily task, the routine, keeping up with your patterns, doing what's familiar, allowing yourself to sustain your life. And so with this energy, sustaining your life can be something that is very useful for you. It can be something that's very beneficial in the sense that you are sustaining things that are good for you, that you are working on your goals and your routine is helping to build up the future you want. But at the same time, if you're sustaining things that are bad for you, that is also going to be mirrored with this card. And so with this archetype, it's very important for you to evaluate your life and look at what you are sustaining. Are you sustaining the life you actually want? Are you doing things that's leading to a future that you want? Or are you sustaining unhealthy habits? Are you doing things or hanging out with people that you don't actually want to be with long term? Are you sustaining a life that is not leading to what you actually want and is actually going to cause resentment and unhappiness? And if so, you have to find ways to stop sustaining it, to start to set boundaries and say no and protect yourself and start putting your energies and start sustaining your routine to be one that is actually allowing you to go for what you want. And the guidebook also has this question that says, take note of the difference between maintaining and sustaining. Which action describes your life more accurately? And so this also brings up the question of, are you maintaining things or are you sustaining them? And so the difference, when it's not posed to you like that, you don't often think of a difference. But sustaining is more like, I am doing this with the purpose of, I am purposely sustaining this because I want it. Maintaining is just doing something more so for the sake of routine and more so because you have to, more so because you feel obligated. Sustaining has this elevated energy of thriving along with it or wanting to succeed, wanting to do it. Even if you're sustaining unhealthy habits, it's because you're wanting what's in the short term because of that, and you're not looking at the long term, how it's actually bad for you. And that's for you to take a moment to step back and to look. And what I love about this image here, it's like you have the clay in the person's hand and you have them cultivating it, carving it, almost if you were to ask a child to make like a clay statue of the earth. That's the vibe it's giving to me. So almost like you have the ability to create within your hands, create the earth, create life. And you're doing it, but you're confined within this box. And so you are like sustaining life, you're cultivating it, you're building it, but it's like you're trapped inside this energy. And so with this archetype appearing for the collective, it begs the question to you, are you okay within the rules that you have confined yourself in which you are sustaining this energy? Have you actually realized what you are sustaining, what you are doing, what you are creating, and the circumstance in which you have started to create it? And so this is some things to consider in your own life, and ask yourself these own questions and really sit, meditate, do some shadow work with it. And so my thoughts on this deck, again, doing this collective reading, it is really good for shadow work, for internal questions, and understanding yourself on a deeper level. But imagine if this was also done with a tarot reading and it was used as a clarifier card or a card to bring some more information to light about the question or the person that you're asking about. I feel like this deck shows a different perspective or shows some information that you might be overlooking and adds this unique perspective, this unique insight. I definitely would recommend, if you get this deck, to read the guidebook, understand the guidebook, and then also use your intuition with it. I think the mixture of your intuition and the very informative guidebook is what's going to make this deck unique and highly efficient for you. I think if you're only using the guidebook, you're going to miss out on the imagery itself and what it leads to you. But if you don't use the guidebook at all, I think there's certain questions and perspectives that you could be missing out on as well. And so again, I would recommend this for all people, but I feel like you need to know where you're at with your level of wanting to experiment with reading and make sure that you're okay with using your intuition, but also reading the guidebook to understand it. I think that is the best combination for this deck. But again, I feel like it's highly informative. I love the details. I love the imagery on the cards, and I love the energy of these cards. I would really recommend them. I'm so excited to have these part of my collection, and I think, again, they are very unique. They're things that you're not going to find with another Oracle deck. It's not going to be a deck that's easily replaced in your collection. And because of that, I feel like if you've been thinking about getting it, as someone who waited a long time before getting it, and now that I got them, I really love how they read, I would suggest get it as soon as you can, because it's definitely worth the money, and it definitely feels like it's a great addition to having your collection. And so I hope that this video helps you figure out if you're going to get this deck or not. Again, I highly recommend it. And if you already have this deck and you love it, let me know in the comments down below what your favorite card is. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and share with anyone else you know who's thinking about getting this deck but isn't sure. If you want to get your own personal reading, I do sell them. You can check out my Etsy shop, or you can message me on Facebook or Instagram. Everything's linked in the description box down below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. I would love to have you part of this family. I post videos every single week, including more unboxing videos like this. I also post other educational videos along with different readings, so that's zodiac, pick-a-pile readings, and collective readings. I have other videos linked in the cards for you to watch next. I can't wait to see you all in my next video. I hope you have a good one. Bye.